Hi, everyone. It's Rich. Welcome to week 8. I hope you had a good reading week. So what we want to do this week is we want to talk about sharing our code basically for reuse rather than writing the same pieces of code in multiple places in our application. What we really want to do is be able to write code once and use that code in several places through the application. If we look back to your forum postings from lesson 6, one of the things I asked you to do was to list for 1 or 2 websites that you go to regularly, what elements are static and which ones are dynamic. And largely those static elements are going to be shared, and the things that people posted regularly, if we look at a couple websites, we've got Globe and Mail here, and people commented that the headers usually were static. They were shared between every page. So no matter where I go in this site, we're going to see the header, and down at the bottom, we're probably going to see this same footer. So I'm on the Globe and Mail's homepage right now. If I want to go and click on any other page, I'm going to get the same header, and I'm going to get the same footer largely on, actually this is taking me off to a different site, on pretty much any page I go into in the site. So rather than creating this header for every single page and this footer for every single page, we want to create these one time and then link them in. This is fairly similar to how we would create a style sheet. Rather than defining our CSS classes on every page, we want to define those in a separate style sheet and simply link that style sheet in. If I go to Amazon, we'll see largely the same thing. We have a header here, dynamic content all the way down, and then at the bottom we have this static footer that's shared. So I'm on a search results page, but if I go in and look at a product, notice my header doesn't change. The header's the same, the footer's the same. So this is one of the things we want to do. We want to look at, and most sites are going to have, this is pretty standard, at the very least 2 shared elements, which is going to be a header and footer. We basically want to build those things once and share them throughout our application. This way, if we want to make changes, so for example, right now Amazon is advertising St. Patrick's Day, they want to make this change and put this banner just in the header file and have every page share it. They don't want to have to go into every single page and add a St. Patrick's Day banner. Here's another site I built several years ago, and again, this site is really a series of components. This looks like one complete web page, but it's actually made up of a series of different reusable components. So we have a header component, we've got a navigation component, there's a news bar on the side, a contact form, a list of featured properties, and then a footer. So at runtime, this all looks like one full web page, but in reality, it's really a series of components. So that if we go into most of the other pages, we've got the same, we've got the header, the nav, the side news component, we have a content area replacing the featured listings, and again, we have our shared footer. So this makes keeping our site up to date really easy. Now, not only do we have the ability to share visual elements like a header, footer, news bar, there's other things we can share as well. One of the main things we want to share within our application that, so far we've been putting in every page that we need is our database connection. So it can be code that we are going to need on multiple pages. If we go and look at our movie application, here's my movie page. And when we're editing a movie, we've got our connection string. When I go to delete a movie, we've got my connection string repeated. My save page, we need that connection string. We have it here again. So this is terribly inefficient. If something changes in that connection string, we're going to have to go into all of these pages and make that update. And a database connection is probably one of the things we're most commonly going to have to change. There's all kinds of reasons why. For example, our website needs to be moved to a new host. Well, all of a sudden, every page, we're going to have to go in and change that host name. Or one of the other common things we have to do is change database usernames and passwords. Some really common scenarios for that would be perhaps a developer who has worked on the project and has access to our database leaves the company and should no longer have access to the database. In that case, we're going to want to change our login to the database, which means every web page that uses it is going to want to change these credentials. We don't want to have to go into every page on the website and make that change. We should store that connection in a global file that every page can link to or share. Another common reason why we have to change database credentials is if our database, our server, the security is compromised. If the database is hacked and a hacker, an attacker perhaps already has access to our credentials, we're going to want to change those to try and prevent future attacks. So again, it makes much more sense to have this stuff, this line, stored in a separate file, a separate connection or database file, and we can simply link to it or connect. One of the other nice benefits is this long connection string that we've been typing out and putting in all our pages so far for 6 weeks. We can store that one place and link to it with a much simpler syntax, which also reduces the chances that we're going to get errors. So, you know, we might repeat visual elements on the page, from page to page. We have cross-page elements, so storing those separately in their own file is a great idea. We may have code, pieces of code. We might have functions, calculations, other business logic that is going to be reused in different parts of our application. Again, it makes sense for us to write those modules of code in one file and simply link them into any page that needs it. The other thing that modularizing our code allows us to do is we can actually reuse these components from one application to another. So now that I have this little news control here, this little news module, and I've got, you know, this list of recent news as well as a news detail page. Well, if I want to go and build another application now and my client needs to have news on their website, this is already written as a self-contained file. So all I simply do is import or copy those files into another application, and I can leverage that functionality. Same with I have this little drop-down navigation. Because this is split off into its own separate file and shared through this application, it's very easy for me to go and port that navigation over to another application. So when we're thinking about code reuse, we want to keep in mind all of these things. What visual components should be shared in the site? What code or logic is going to be shared on multiple applications in the site? As well as what components do we have, for example, featured listings or property listings? You know, let's say I have a client who is a home builder and wants to show off their properties. Well, now that I have this properties module that includes photos, video, map, and details, because this is in its own set of separate files, the code is modularized, I can easily port this logic and this code into another application. So what I want you to do now, if you click the link above, the Introduction to Code Reuse video, there's actually a quick quiz we need you to complete. And once you're going to have to do the quiz until you get all the answers correct. Once you have that correct, you can mark this as reviewed and move on to activity 2.